2 steps forward, 1 step back. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Sometimes golf progression feels like a confusing dance where you're not sure who's leading, if you're doing it right, and oh look, now you've trodden on your own foot, fallen over, and everyone's pointing and laughing at you. It's confusing, it's confounding, and you might just end up home alone at the end of the night crying into your pillow. That's not just me, right? But why? Why is it that golf improvement so often feels so hard to grasp? And what can we do about that? Stick around and let's find out. So what is it that lies behind this progression-regression cycle that we go through when we're trying to get better at golf? Why is it that we golfers are so often driven to distraction when we're trying to improve, even if we are willing to put in the time and effort? Sure, some things are hard to learn and some things are harder than others. But why is it that golf so specifically leans into this dynamic? If you're trying to cook and you want to chop an onion and you don't have a clue where to start, then sure, you could just take a knife and hack the onion up. It'd be ugly, but technically it would work. If someone then came and showed you the proper technique for chopping an onion, you'd understand it. You might not be great at it at first, but with a bit of practice, you'd get it down and then you'd know how to chop an onion. You wouldn't spend the first 2 weeks cutting off each one of your fingers trying to figure it out, and then on some days get it right and some days completely forget what you were doing. And yes, it might be a slightly ridiculous example, but you get the point. That is essentially what golf can feel like, and part of the reason why it is so maddening. Golf progression can be painful, and this pain can be truly costly. Some people stop enjoying the game, some people get very, very down on themselves, it can ruin your mood for a day or a weekend or even a week. And in the most extreme cases, players can actually just give up the game entirely because of how this dynamic plays out. That is a great shame. And unfortunately, I can't necessarily change that dynamic. It is to some extent fundamental to golf and the progression path of golf. But what we might be able to do today is explain some of the reasons why it does occur, reassure people that it's perfectly natural, and maybe give some best practices for getting the best out of your progression and not falling too hard into this backsliding trap. Just quickly, if you are enjoying the video so far and you are drawn towards this type of content around golf, then I would love it if you could subscribe to the channel. I am putting out videos along these lines every week, along with insights into my own golfing journey, and I would love to have you along for the ride. So at this point, it's worth asking the question of how do we get good at stuff? Not necessarily golf specifically, but just things in general, skills that we develop. How does that process play out? Well, there are quite a few models out there, and this admittedly is just one, but it is one that is quite commonly cited and commonly accepted, and that is the 4 stages of competence. So I'm not going to get too deep into this or too academic with it, but I'm going to run through it very, very quickly and how each of those stages applies to golf, and then more pertinently, which of the ones that trip us up and cause this very painful progression-regression cycle when we are trying to improve. So according to this model, the first stage is unconscious incompetence. This is essentially, you don't know how to do a thing, but you don't even know how you would do a thing. You don't even understand what your deficit is. You might not even be aware of how hard the thing is to do in the first place. So as far as golf is concerned, unconscious incompetence would be, not only can I not hit my driver straight, I don't even know what it would take to hit a driver straight. I don't know where I would start, what I'm lacking, and surely it's not really that hard, is it? The second stage is conscious incompetence. So you still can't do the thing, but you realize that you can't do the thing and that you're going to need to learn certain stages and skills in order to be able to do the thing. So let's just say putting. I realize I am bad at putting, and I realize that to be good at putting, I am going to need to acquire certain skills such as green reading, speed control, and being able to start the ball on a given line. I can't do those things right now, but I know that I will need to do them to be able to be a good putter. The third stage is conscious competence. So I can actually do the thing if I really focus on it and think about it in the right way. To go back to our putting example, I will read the break using whatever system I want to use for that. I will then pick my start line. I will line the ball up using the alignment aid on the side of it. I will take my practice swings. I will look at the hole to get a feel for the distance. I will set the putter down behind the ball, making sure the alignment aid on the putter matches the alignment aid on the ball. I will look at the hole, I will look at the ball, I will bring the putter back on the right arc, I will make sure my through swing matches my back swing. Try not to decelerate, make sure the putter face is delivered square, all of these things, and then hopefully I'll be able to make a putt. I can do it, but I have to think about it very deliberately and go through all these stages to achieve the desired goal. Now, it's not hard to realize when you break it down like that, and that is just with regards to one skill in golf, putting, why this conscious competence stage is the one that trips us up the most. We're going to come back to that, but this is where most of us get stuck when we are trying to get better at golf. And then the final stage is unconscious competence. So you can do the thing and you don't really even need to think about it. This is where you get to if you might be able to be a teacher, you might be able to be an extremely good, accomplished golfer. It might even apply to you on those days, and certainly I've found these are very rare but wonderful days when you aren't really thinking about your game, you're just in the zone and everything seems to be going right without you really needing to think about too much at all. So the reason why progression in golf can sometimes feel impossible and where it most often breaks down is in those two middle stages, 2 and 3, where everything is very conscious. When you're either consciously incompetent and trying to figure out what to do, or whether you're consciously competent and can do it, but really need to focus on it. Regarding conscious incompetence, i.e. trying to figure out what it is you need to do, a big part of the problem is that there are so many conflicting theories, so many contrasting pieces and sources of information out there that it can be very difficult to even figure out what it is you're supposed to do, let alone learn how to do it. Some coaches will dogmatically espouse hitting certain positions mechanically in your golf swing as being key to successfully striking the ball. Others will say that it doesn't matter what your golf swing looks like as long as you satisfy certain impact fundamentals. Or to return to our putting example, let's take green reading. Some people swear by aim point, some people go with toe read, some people still plumb bob, some people, and I'm sure you've heard them on various professional golf broadcasts, think all of it is just witchcraft. And this kind of debate, back and forth, information, misinformation, contrasting information, applies to pretty much every area of the golf game. Everything you're trying to learn and trying to improve is subject to this massive information, a lot of it which doesn't piece together very comfortably. So what you actually need to do and learn is very hard to come to a conclusion on before you even set about figuring out how to do it. Then I think the even bigger problem comes with regards to conscious competence. Even if you have figured out what the right things are for you, and these will vary golfer to golfer in terms of what is important to your particular swing, your particular body, etc., to help you get from where you are now to being a better player. But even if you have figured out what those things are, golf is so complex, so multifaceted, and crucially so proactive in that the ball is at rest and waiting for us to act on it, that it can be almost impossible to learn how to execute those things in the moment. Let's say you might need more wrist flexion at the top of your backswing in order to deliver the club face square. And by the way, I'm not saying that is important for everybody, but there are some golfers for whom that would be helpful. Let's say you fall into that category. Well, how do you make sure you have that appropriate amount of wrist flexion while also making sure that you shift your weight correctly, that your ground contact is good, that you're delivering the club on the correct path? Because after all, a square face is no good if your path is all over the place. And all of that is assuming that you are making a fully committed swing in the first place, because you're confident that you've read the lie correctly, that you've taken into account the wind, that you've picked a target which is neither too aggressive nor excessively conservative, and assuming you've even got the right club in your hand. Wait, what was it we were supposed to be focused on? Oh right, wrist flexion. Unlike so many other sports, you have more or less all the time you want, especially if you're Patrick Cantlay, to think about all of these things every time you stand over a shot, to the point that it can become almost impossible to get the club to even make contact with the ball, let alone in the way that you want it to. But let's say you do manage to spend the time and effort figuring out how to work on whatever it is you need to do in your swing, to the point that you don't even necessarily need to think about it anymore. Well, that's great, but that's just one element of hitting golf shots. And to use this example, That's just one element of hitting full golf shots, to say nothing of your short game or your putting, for instance. The conscious competence element of golf is both a mile wide and a mile deep. It's not so much plate spinning or juggling, but plate spinning while juggling, while riding a unicycle. This conscious competence element of golf progression is both entirely necessary to actually getting better, but also has the potential to actively undermine your performance while you're out on the course, as anybody who's tried to play a round of golf with a head full of swing thoughts will very well know. So that's some insight into why progression is so hard to come by in golf. But the good news is that it does come eventually. If you stick with it and you do the right things, you do over time become consciously and eventually unconsciously more competent at the varying elements that golf requires. But it's crucial to remember that because of all of this, the progression graph in golf is almost never linear. It goes up and down like a roller coaster designed by a 12-year-old who's drunk.
Have you ever seen a drunk baby?
You need to brace yourself for regression, sometimes completely out of nowhere, and zoom out if you're to accurately gauge how much better a player you are now versus previously. Take too close a view and the graph will look spiky as hell, but if you're able to look macro enough, you will see that you have gotten better. Also, you need to pick and choose what it is you focus on in terms of your improvement. Unless you have basically unlimited time to grind on your game, you just won't be able to get better at all the different areas of golf at the same time. If your driving is really weak and letting you down, then work on that concertedly, but accept the fact that, say, your putting or your chipping may get slightly worse while you're doing that. It's not ideal, but it's the right trade-off if you're to progress as a player holistically over time. And crucial to both of these things, your sort of overall progression as a player and then your micro progression at particular golfing skills, is that any regression that does happen tends to stick at a higher level than you were previously. So think about it like leveling up a character in a video game. Let's say you were level 3 at chipping and then you work really hard on it and you get up to level 6. But then you pause on that to try and improve your driving. Well, your chipping aptitude may erode slightly while you're focused on that driving, but maybe it'll hit a baseline of level 4, so you'll never quite go back to where you were previously before you put in the time and effort to get better at it. We've got to do that bit by bit with all the different areas of our golf game in order to piece them together and become better players overall. I know that this all sounds and ultimately is a lot of effort, but just to give some solace, maintaining skill takes far less effort than developing it in the first place. So once you do break through to new levels, both as a player and within your different skill sets, you can stay where you are with maintenance level effort rather than having to put in that same amount of grind that got you there in the first place. To use another analogy, it takes far less weightlifting to build muscle than it does to maintain muscle that's already been built. What does this all mean? Well, for starters, it means that it's not just you.
It's not your fault.
This cycle of better, worse applies to all golfers and it's relative to your skill level. So take some comfort in the fact that you are not alone in this. It's frustrating, but it's frustrating for everybody. It also means, unfortunately, that it's not likely to stop for as long as we are trying to meaningfully improve as players. While we may not like this, our golfing lives will ultimately be happier if we learn to accept it. It also means that we can take comfort in the fact that, although progression is often slower and slippier than we would like it to be, it ultimately will come if we do the right things over the long term. And once we do improve, we should hit a new baseline level of skill eventually. 3 steps forward and 2 steps back may not be the fastest way to get anywhere, but sometimes in golf it's the best we've got, and it will get you to your destination eventually. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. And if you did, then you will definitely enjoy this video about how you can often be better at golf, but your scores might not show it.